This podcast is brought to you by Deepbridge Capital LLP. Deepbridge is authorised and regulated by the Financial Conduct Authority. Please note that investments discussed are both illiquid and high risk and won't be suitable for all investors and should be considered as part of a diversified portfolio. The content of this podcast should not be construed as financial or taxation advice. We recommend investors seek appropriate professional financial advice. Any views expressed may no longer be current and may have already been acted upon. Welcome to this latest Deepbridge Discovery podcast. My name's Andrew Aldridge, I'm Head of Marketing at Deepbridge Capital. The aim of these podcasts is to bring to life some of our investee companies, get to know the founders and the CEOs of these companies, and really get under the skin of kind of what Deepbridge does and how we invest capital. I'm delighted today to be joined by Jane Lucy, CEO and co-founder at Perswitch, a Deepbridge investee company. Hi Jane, thank you for joining us. First and foremost, can I just kick off by just asking you a bit of background of your background prior to setting up Perswitch?
Yeah, sure. Hi. So I was originally a lawyer. I practiced for a number of years before moving into television. And I worked in TV at the time that the internet created an opportunity to think about how to engage audiences differently. So using things like social networks and websites and so forth. So I was involved in particular in Channel 4's first cross-platform campaigns. I worked with a guy called Hugh Fearnley-Whittingstall of River Cottage.
Of course.
Who is particularly interested in sustainability issues. So I did things like Chicken Out and Fish Fight, which were high-profile campaigns with Channel 4, which led to changing supermarket policy across Britain and changing European law in relation to fishing stocks. And so they're incredibly effective at giving consumers, and we engage over 1 million people, very simple ways to engage in technology to affect some kind of market disruption. So I became really interested in that as an approach of using technology in that way. And when I was still working with Hugh, I did a couple of energy-specific projects, one with British Gas and another one with Uswitch. And I could see firsthand how those big legacy players had a very different idea to me in terms of innovation and the technology change that was underway, and how to use that to change the consumer value proposition and experience. So I decided to do something about it. It was at the same time actually of being as my own consumer experience as an energy user, of having British Gas credit agencies hound me and chase me at the same time as British Gas giving me refund checks. So, clearly energy suppliers struggle with getting the basics right, and there has to be a better way of doing things. So I set up Labrador, which essentially was sort of a smarter version of energy comparison and switching. So sort of like your Uswitch or your Money Supermarket, but it did two things that were radically different. One was it was data driven. So instead of asking you all the questions of how many bedrooms and do you cook with gas or electricity, I don't even have to ask you who your energy supplier is. All we need is your address. And from that, I could pull data from industry to know your current usage, your current tariff, supplier, meter type, to be able to give you an instant quote of the cheapest energy tariff available to you, according to your preference, if you want green, certain customer service ratings and so forth. And then the second bit was to create this model of a delegated authority. So the idea that instead of being a one-off transaction, you sign up to Labrador and we will automatically always ensure that you remain on the cheapest energy tariff according to your preferences. So that service was sold a number of years ago. I then, after a short stint at the acquirer, I left and I joined Revolut, the challenger bank, as the head of strategic partnerships, where I worked across multiple product categories and multiple territories, which included energy, but also things like broadband, insurance, and I suppose sort of creating a reputation, I suppose, for focusing on product value propositions in regulated markets. So I guess you're using the legal background in terms of, in regulated markets, really understanding where the gaps are and room to innovate and disrupt the markets in a new way. But whilst Revolut was a fascinating experience, I sort of felt like I hadn't finished what I started with Labrador, which had been to build a data company where the domestic proposition was just one use case of lots. So I had met Vikesh, one of my co-founders, at a number of different industry events. And we, had a lot in common and shared the same ideas around the state of the energy market and how it was evolving. Vikesh was heading up the global unit of Wipro Utilities. So together with Vikesh and a couple of other co-founders who Vikesh had worked with for a number of years, we set up Perswitch. And in terms of my other co-founders, as I mentioned, they work together at Wipro, Ensign, but also our tech team are ex-Apogee. So obviously, very experienced in terms of building secure and scalable technology systems.
And I guess kind of going back to your personal background, it's a relatively unusual kind of switch to go from law into becoming an entrepreneur and that kind of thing. Is that kind of been a helpful kind of background to have as you've kind of going through the mire of setting up a business and being an entrepreneur? Has that kind of background really helped you?
Yes, I mean, it sounds completely random, particularly when I tell you that I was actually a criminal defense lawyer rather than something directly relevant.
I think that's a whole different podcast. I'm sure some of the stories you've got from that, yeah.
I know. In fact, I was involved in a case that there's a Hollywood film made out of it. It is definitely another story, but it actually does connect. Even though, as I said, it sounds very random, but I'm finding myself, dealing in regulated markets where understanding the law and understanding how to interpret it, is essential. And in fact, not just regulated in terms of the energy market, but also data. So, for instance, we have got consent from industry to be able to access data and use it for a purpose that no one else had thought of asking before. And that involves being able to get data to report carbon emissions for indirect emissions without needing consent. Okay. Now, I know that sounds a bit sort of complicated mumbo jumbo, but it's actually really significant and important, because if you think, for instance, if you take a bank obviously has legal obligations in terms of the carbon reporting, and of course everyone's got net zero pledges. And for a bank, every single building that they've ever given a mortgage for is part of their scope 3 emissions.
Okay.
Now, they're never going to get all of those building occupants, who may not even be customers, to give them the data to be able to quantify what the carbon footprint of those buildings are. But with us, all they need to do is give us a list of the addresses, and we can pull the actual data for those buildings and provide them with an accurate footprint. So again, sort of, all of that happened because of being a lawyer and understanding that actually there are some grounds to access and use data beyond consent.
Absolutely. And obviously the law around data has never probably been tighter than it is now. So having that kind of knowledge and understanding, I can imagine is a very useful tool for you. Can you just simply describe what Perswitch is and does, and then kind of give us a little bit of a background to the journey that you've been on since founding and kind of where the company is?
Sure. We have 4 key value propositions at the moment. So I should perhaps sort of say, actually, so once we founded Perswitch, we actually bought the Labrador service back. So that enabled us to be sort of live and revenue generating essentially on day one through that service. I mean, we put in some optimizations, but it enabled us to hit the ground running. And since then, we expanded the service to not only cater for domestic, but also do businesses. Then we added electric vehicles. Then we added the carbon services, and then we added the API suite. So what that means in terms of core value propositions for an end customer, for example, is home energy. We help households buy and use energy to save money, time, and carbon. Our service is not only free, but we can actually pay them cash for energy efficiency.
Okay.
In terms of businesses and energy, we help businesses buy and use energy by providing a data-driven one-stop shop to save them money and enable them to easily transition to net zero. In terms of the carbon services, we enable companies to be net zero leaders via affordable, automated, and accurate tools, hitting net zero this year, not 2030, and every year. Unlike others, we offer a one-stop shop that continues to leverage the latest technologies, independent accreditations, and compliance. Our services include quantifications of scopes 1, 2, and 3, reduction advice, a marketplace of energy attribution certificates and carbon credits, plus prediction to enable customers to buy ahead on the voluntary carbon markets. And fourthly, our data API services. We offer a pay-as-you-go, plug-and-play, one-stop shop where we take care of the integrations, the commercials, the logic, compliance, and updates. for energy and carbon APIs, which is for homes, businesses, vehicles, generation assets that enable businesses, be it a fintech, energy broker, consultant, large tech companies, to do more faster. Now, I'm sorry that was a bit of a weird list, but obviously, as you can see, we do such a wide amount.
It's a wide-ranging company, absolutely, yeah. And I guess, as you alluded to before, the key, the hub of what you do is data. It's within the energy sector, etc. But you are a data play that is effectively what the business is.
Exactly. So, the energy market is one of the last markets to be digitalized, which is astounding given energy is all about prediction and reconciliation. So how the market has operated without decent data for forever, and everyone thought that it was the last priority to address is surprising. But it means, with that digitalization and that technology change, not only does that mean that there's a huge amount of optimization, so billions and billions of pounds of money to be saved in terms of those optimizations, but there are new opportunities that new data obviously unlock as well. But just the energy market. So it's we really do have sort of two routes into our business, either the energy piece or the carbon piece. So, obviously, with the climate change issues and COP26 and, there's trend now for companies to have net zero pledges. There's a huge opportunity around carbon. And what most people don't realize is that energy forms 73% of the world's carbon footprint. So if you're going to do a single thing that relates to the climate agenda and issue and transition to net zero, it's going to be energy. And whilst we see a number of different carbon software companies popping up, none of them understand the energy market. They don't have that energy background, which is a major gap given energy is the bulk of it. I cannot overemphasize enough just how complicated the energy market is. We still have gas and electricity happening entirely independently of each other, which means that you often get an address listed completely differently in different data silos. You have some gas meters in cubic meters versus kilowatt hours. You've got dynamic pricing with some tariffs. You've got some meters that have different pricing on the weekend versus weekday, or from one half hour to the next. So, it is such a complicated market where, there's a real opportunity in both data, but also experience and understanding the energy market to bring to this space.
So I guess you're one of the first organisations to really pull that data together and try and make sense of it, which gives you kind of that first mover advantage in the market, I guess.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, we were the first company to get access to gas data for businesses. We've been the first to launch a number of carbon related services using energy data. So yeah, definitely we've got, it's a combination of knowing where the data exists, because there are so many different data silos around the place, and you've got a mix of regulated and deregulated parts of the market. And Vikesh thankfully built and designed most of the data silos. So if there's one person who knows where the data is, it's Vikesh.
So he knows how to find the data, and you know how to legally use the data. That's it's a powerful combo, absolutely. And I guess that's it. It's having the skill sets and the knowledge within the industry, that you understand how the energy companies work, you understand how they store and they communicate, etc., and you can interpret that and put that in a more user friendly and manner to your clients.
Exactly, and it's so there is a big piece about opening up access, but we're not just simply data resellers. We are creating new assets with the data that haven't been available before, and new services to be able to really make sure that we're creating maximum value out of the opportunity.
Brilliant. So you mentioned obviously COP26 and kind of net zero, etc., and obviously in the UK, part of the government drive at the moment is building back greener, etc. So there is a real drive along on that side of things. Kind of what other kind of economic or climate kind of opportunities are there out there? I mean, I guess more and more businesses are going back into the workplace post-COVID, etc. So I guess there's opportunities there to kind of help businesses.
Definitely. I mean, you would have seen energy in the news many times over the last 3 months in particular. wholesale prices have been completely through the roof. We've got this new discussion around security of supply, with Russia and China affecting our supply chain. So, it really helps because, obviously energy is invisible. So, having energy, being back forefront of people's mind is really useful for us. And obviously it stimulates a lot more inbound business opportunity. The thing about energy, which is great from our perspective, is that everyone needs it. I mean, it's a total mass market proposition.
Absolutely.
And the other thing about it is it's really expensive, particularly in the last 3 months. So, and it's only going to become more expensive, not just because of the wholesale market trend. And even though some of those wholesale market issues that we see at the moment, some of them will recover, but not all of them. And in fact, I heard the regulator speak at the end of last year, and his sentiment was actually, this is now business as usual, this sort of pricing trend. But in addition to that, our energy prices are going to go up because of the electrification of transport and heat.
Absolutely.
So, all of a sudden now our home energy bill is going to include our car. So just that alone is going to see a big jump, which is going to help, people re-engage to think, well, hang on a second, have I really optimized how much I'm paying here? And then in tandem to that, you've got the environmental agenda as well. So, to be honest, it doesn't matter in our service if you're motivated by money or motivated by climate. It's the same end goal in terms of what our service can do, but it's great that we can engage people through different incentives to be able to maximize our reach. But you mentioned just, again, about sort of timely relevance. And another thing that we do, which is different, relates to the current state of the market with COVID and post-COVID. And obviously, because of lockdown, a lot of people have been working remotely. And I think there's enough research out there to indicate that just because we've seen the end of lockdowns, fingers crossed, that doesn't mean that we're all returning into the workplace. And most people don't ever want to do that on a full-time basis. Absolutely. So, I think the degree of remote working is here to stay, whatever percentage that ends up being. And that poses a real challenge to companies in terms of managing their energy and also energy supplies in terms of quoting what sort of prices, in terms of what sort of demand to expect. How do you hedge on the wholesale market for a business when you've got no idea to what extent, they're going to be using their offices over the next 12 months. So we've been able to access data which can highlight both the pre and post-COVID energy demand requirements. So that enables companies to better manage and predict, what their costs are likely to be. Also to be able to do carbon reporting in terms of, we can also access staff, household carbon footprints without needing consent, to enable the companies to keep that picture complete. But also to enable energy suppliers to quote fair prices, because in the absence of seeing that pre and post-COVID demand, they're putting an uplift in to cover the risk of not having that data visibility.
Right.
So with our customers, that they are able to reduce those cost prices by sharing the data.
Okay, and I guess for if people are working from home, so I guess it's not just businesses that use has changed. I guess individuals as well. If you've been working at home for the last 2 years, then your energy prices will have gone up because you're at home more.
Yeah, exactly. And so, again, we've got the data to enable individuals to do a tax claim. So, there is a default tax claim that you can make without having to have any evidence. But it may well be that you're entitled to significantly more. You just need the evidence. Well, we've got it.
Fantastic. So that's kind of the opportunities, etc. I guess kind of what are your highlights since launching Perswitch? Kind of what's kind of really been the bit that's kind of got you excited, I guess.
Well, I think one of the big things that we had in terms of sort of milestones was we launched a co-branded service with NatWest and also the Royal Bank of Scotland. So, having such a big name partner with us was obviously great for our credibility.
Absolutely.
Important for us as a business with our sort of growth and business development. So, that was an enormous sort of tick in validation for us. And, not just in terms of validation of us as a team and, our technology solution, but also I think the market opportunity and, just seeing again the fact that we have these multiple incentives for people to want to work with us. So for a bank, for instance, yes, they want to, how do they provide added value propositions to their customers, particularly with open banking and, the development of marketplaces and so forth. How do they give their customers something extra to want to keep banking with NatWest or RBS? But also, all of a sudden, with that explosion of open banking departments are looking at how they can monetize data. Yep. And then, of course, they're also now having to have legal obligations of the carbon reporting, and then, wanting to take their customers on the net zero journey with them. So, there's lots of different things that we can, and then also actually another one is that, the data is enabling us to identify customers who have a propensity to be interested in other products. So, be it a loan to buy an EV or buy solar panels, or, so there's just so many different applications for what we do, and that's just to a bank, let alone, think about a car retailer like Kazoo, or a property developer, like Persimmon. There's just, pick a sector.
And it's ripe. And I guess, as you said, with the banks or with anybody you're working with, I guess it is that we've seen with energy the drive from consumer demands to move to green energy only, etc. and things. And I guess that's exactly the same across other industries as well, that they want to be seen as being green, because not only is it the right thing to be doing, but also it is consumer demand means that it can be profitable for them to do that as well. So I guess having a resource like yourselves there is helping them on the journey. I noticed as well that I saw that Perswitch has been involved with PwC's PropTech program, and you're involved with the Green Alliance. So I guess, can you tell us just a little bit about those and kind of what they entail and kind of the involvement?
Sure. They're both invitation only. And with PwC, it's sort of in response to a lot of their customers, talking to them and, asking them for some guidance around carbon reporting, and looking for innovative tech solutions to help them with those challenges. And so PwC felt there's an opportunity for them to identify a number of companies that they thought were leading in that space, to be able to work with them and give us the opportunity to pitch to PwC clients, as well as PwC themselves. So, again, that example of, a company having remote working and challenges around, carbon footprint reporting, as well as, being a company that they would love to be able to take their employees on their net zero journey with them. So again, that kind of conversation is what we're happening with PwC and a number of their clients. In terms of Green Tech Alliance, as I said, it's invitation only. Community really of companies who are passionate about climate change and technology, and it's really sort of a network to share tips and contacts and resources to help accelerate progress.
I guess that's a very useful kind of entity to be involved in then, just to kind of have that shared experiences, I guess, as you drive things through. So that's kind of looking back and looking at kind of where Perswitch has come from, etc. What are your objectives or your hopes for kind of the next 12 months, 3 years, that, kind of what does the future look like, or what do you hope the future looks like?
Sure. So for the next year, our focus really is on monetizing our existing propositions. So, whilst it sounds like we do an enormous amount of different things, it is all coming from a single technology solution. So, we are focused. We have built, something that's singular and robust, but it is just that we can then package that in different ways for different audiences. So as I said, the focus really is on monetizing those 4 key value propositions. We are live in revenue generating with all of them, but we're sort of early revenue stages for them. So it's all about growth. And to that end, we've just hired a Chief Commercial Officer, which is extremely exciting. So a new important addition to the team. And obviously, within the next 12 months, our first milestone is obviously hitting that golden 1 million annual recurring revenue milestone, and then hitting the EBITDA positive milestone. So they're sort of the 2 key ones that we're focused on at the moment.
Fantastic.
And then beyond that, we've already got interest for global expansion. So because our tech team at Apogee, which was acquired by Google, we have a great relationship with Google. They've already approached us with interest to have a joint go-to-market strategy in Australia, for instance. We have a partner already here who's an American company who is also interested in enabling us to expand to the US. But we're trying not to get distracted about those just yet, just to sort of grow our revenue here first and then move on to those opportunities next.
Exactly. And I guess it's, when we talk about what we look for in investee companies, we always talk about global scalability. But the other thing we always talk about is the management team having focus and laser-like focus. And I know when talking to our investment team, talking about why we invested in Perswitch, that was very much a golden star kind of about what you guys do and your plans for the future. So yeah, I mean that's great to hear. Kind of away from work, we like to give our investors and our advisors we work with just kind of a bit of a flavour, kind of personalities of who we work with, etc. I mean, outside of work, what are your personal interests?
Well, I have 3 children, so that obviously
takes up most of your time. Yeah.
I suppose that I have been known to be a bit of a card shark. I do like cards, and we've managed to teach the children poker, which is. But my sort of latest passion is I'm learning golf.
Okay.
I'm definitely a beginner still, but there was a popular flavour with my Christmas presents. And in fact, my birthday as well was just after Christmas. So I've got some new golf clubs and a golf lesson on Sunday. So
that's is that partly to get out of the house away from the children, or is that just a complete coincidence? Yeah. No comment is the answer. I think you should take the legal stance there. That's definitely a no comment answer, I think. But no, great. And yeah, have the children started beating you at poker yet? That's the question, I guess.
Occasionally, they haven't quite got as many tricks up their sleeve after decades of playing cards. So I'm going to keep my advantage as I can.
Very good, very good. And then the last question we always ask our guests on the podcast is just for you to name your favourite book, a film, and a song or an album. Just give a flavour of kind of who you are and kind of your interest, really.
Sure. Well, I struggled to get time to read as much as I'd like to. And it used to be that every summer holidays I would read 3 books. Just that would be my thing. And obviously with COVID, there hasn't been a summer holiday. So I'm a bit rusty with my favorite books. But sort of the last sort of book series I read was Daniel Silva's Gabriel Allon series, which I really enjoyed, which was a recommendation tip from my dad.
Fantastic.
In terms of movies, a big fan of American Hustle. I really
okay,
like
great.
Amy Adams as actresses.
So maybe is that linked to the poker, to the cards, etc.? Is that kind of, is there a theme here that we should be aware of?
It's not actually. It's more the actors in it, and it's just so fast paced, and it's that
Absolutely.
Good balance of action and humour.
It's a great film. Yeah, I love that film. Yeah, and music, song or album.
Well, actually, the last Christmas I got given a piano. So the other thing that I've been doing whenever I've got time is trying to learn the piano. And with learning, I've become a bit of a fan of Max Richter. In terms of his music.
Yeah. So I guess one of the things I can take away from all this is that you don't like sitting still. You like to be doing things. I think that's, I don't know how you find the time, quite frankly, but yeah. Thank you very much for your time, Jane. I really appreciate it. Yeah, great to hear more about Perswitch, what you're doing. And yeah, we look forward to catching up with you over the coming months and years to see how you're getting on. But yeah, we're very excited to be working with you guys. And yeah, I know we've had some really good feedback from our advised investors about you as a company and being able to invest in you. So thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
Excellent. Thanks, Jane. Thank you for joining us. If you have any topics or ideas of what you'd like us to discuss in future podcasts, then please email us at discovery@deepbridgecapital.com. This podcast was brought to you by Deepbridge Capital LLP. Deepbridge is authorised and regulated by the Financial Conduct Authority. Please note that investments discussed are both illiquid and high risk and won't be suitable for all investors and should be considered as part of a diversified portfolio. The content of this podcast should not be construed as financial or taxation advice. We recommend investors seek appropriate professional financial advice. Any views expressed may no longer be current and may have already been acted upon.